super helpful. Awesome. Looks like you guys can hear me. Okay. So welcome to our first data entry and program reporting webinar for the new fiscal year. I also have on the line with me Elisa Chavez, another one of our health ed specialists, as well as Kathleen Johnson, one of our fiscal analysts here today. So we're really just here today to set you all up to really be more comfortable with the program reporting side of things for your CalFresh outreach contract. We really just want you to be familiar with what's going to be needed when Q1 ends and moving forward. Your first report's not due till January 15th, so we have some time, but we just want to make sure that you know what will be needed when your first reporting is due. So we're going to go over that today. Next slide. Okay, so our training overview for the morning. First, we're going to go over your scope of work items. So we'll look at that chart here in a minute, but you probably remember putting this chart together when you were developing your budgets and everything for the contract. So we're going to take a look at that, and that's really going to help gauge what sort of information that you'll be collecting for your program reporting. We're going to go over the main data collection tools that you'll be using, some data entry best practices, and then we're going to go into, or Lisa's going to go over some additional data collecting logs that we've developed to help you with some of those additional scope of work items. We're going to look at the quarterly reporting requirements and what we need for you to send us, and then the semi-annual reporting requirements as well. So we're going to take a look at a few documents today. And I just want to say that if you've already been up and trained this year, if you've already had your annual training with us, some of these things might already look familiar. But if you have not yet had your campus training, don't worry. Some of these things will look brand new to you, but I definitely suggest that after you and your team do get up and trained, you can definitely come back and watch this same video, so then it'll make a little bit more sense. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this chart was the one that I mentioned may look familiar to you all. So this chart should have all of your scope of work items that we really need to capture. So next slide. There'll be the same picture, but with some boxes. Okay, so the boxes on here that are surrounded by the blue rectangles are scope of work items that everyone should have, whether you're a campus or whether you're one of our far north subcontractors. You all should have numbers in these boxes that are up on the screen. So those boxes include your electronic applications submitted, your electronic applications approved, your CalFresh pre-screening goals, and your CalFresh partnerships. So all of you should have numbers in these boxes that you'll need to sort of report on. Now, some of you may also have additional scope of work items in the boxes, in the squares that are not surrounded by the blue box. So you may have a goal or a scope of work item for paper applications. I don't think very many of you do, but a few of you might, as well as the paper applications approved, the SAR 7 form submitted, so that's that semi-annual reporting form. You may have goals for that, as well as the annual recertification forms. So if you have goals in there, we will go over some forms to help you track those. And even if you don't have scope of work numbers in those boxes, it's still a really good thing to track if you start doing those things, because it just really helps show the type of outreach work that you're doing, and we want you to get credit for that work. So even if you don't have scope of work items or numbers in those squares, you can still track those items if your campus or your organization are completing those. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to go over our main data collection tools. So if you're a continuing Far North partner or a campus from the last few years, you may be familiar with these already. So we have our contact sheet there on the left and our master log on the right. So our contact sheet really is our main data source that we use to capture our applicants. This sheet really is, it's filled out by, or should be filled out by everyone that does an application, and then it will eventually get plugged into the master log, which we'll go into in a little bit. But if we can go to the next slide, we can blow that contact sheet up a little bit. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if you've already had your training with us this year, then you probably are familiar with our new contact sheet. We made quite a few edits to this for this new fiscal year, and we tried to make it a little bit more user-friendly. So we definitely have tried to fine-tune it with a lot of your suggestions as well. So this is the new one. And this will actually mirror what goes into your master log, and the order should be in the same. The items should be in the same order, and it should make sense when you're actually doing the data entry. But I just wanted to go over this and point out a few important fields. So a lot of this is self-explanatory, especially the middle portion that's in white. We usually have the client fill that out themselves when we're getting them ready to do the application. But then the rest of the fields on here are really for your staff or your interns to fill out when they're doing the application. And I do want to point out at the top where it says method of assistance and how did they hear about CalFresh outreach, and then it has that little line for name or location of referral. This section is really helpful when you're trying to identify what sort of outreach is working really well and what partnerships are really fruitful. So you're able to really track here, say that, for example, you're having a lot of students come from their EOP office. It would be really good to track that sort of information on here so that you see that partnership is, really, really good. Or if you're noticing that you're not seeing a lot of people that have heard about CalFresh outreach from a presentation, for example, you may want to think about doing something more surrounding that in the future. So that can really help tweak and fine tune your outreach efforts that you're doing. Okay, so that middle portion, again, like I said, we usually have the client fill that part out. Hopefully they fill it out as legibly as possible. But I personally have the worst handwriting ever, so I can't really talk. That line there in bold at the bottom of that section that asks about texting, emailing, or calling regarding their CalFresh case, that line's really important because that helps you do your follow-ups. And so we're planning on doing another webinar about follow-ups specifically here in the next few months. But really that gives you the freedom to be able to contact the applicant after they do the application to just check in with them and make sure that they're on the right track or that they are getting the support that they need to get through that application process. So that line is really important. We see a lot of our students being okay with that texting option, and that's been a big best practice that we've learned on our own campus. But any of those options are available if you want to do follow-ups that way. Okay, this next grade out section, so the biggest section, it talks about the type of application. So we definitely want to capture if it's an online or a paper application. Again, we really want to encourage and strongly recommend that you use the online application whenever possible. Paper is definitely more of that last resort, but there are times when you might need to use a paper application. For example, you may have a tabling event where you don't have Wi-Fi or you don't have the electronic capabilities to do an online application. Paper applications in that situation are definitely fine, but if you do have the ability to do the electronic application, the online one, then that's always preferred. It just gets to the county quicker. There's less of a chance of it getting lost in transit, lost in the mail, whatever it may be. So that online application is really preferred. Moving on to the online application number, definitely capture this whenever possible. we will see this number at the end of the online application after you've completed it, so that can just be filled in there. We also started tracking if an applicant is displaced or not. So displaced is another word for homeless, but a lot of people in our experience didn't necessarily identify as homeless, but they identified as displaced. So going back to our training, if someone is, for example, couch surfing or something like that, they could be considered displaced. So that's good to capture there. This next section is the demographics that CDSS really wants us to track, and these are demographics that we need to report on in our quarterly report. So I want to really just point out that all boxes that apply to the applicant's household should be checked. So you will oftentimes have applicants that meet more than one of these. So you may have a college student that has a child under 18, check both of those boxes if that's the case, because the state would like to see those numbers. They would like to see that household information, and they would like to see those numbers. So definitely check all the boxes that apply, not just one. You will definitely also have cases where none of these apply, and that's totally fine, but we encourage you to still capture that and not just leave it blank. Definitely check that off if none of them apply. Or you can always check off unknown if you really don't know, or if you forgot to have that part of the conversation. But we really would encourage you to use those other ones besides unknown. Okay, and then finally, as many of you know, the student eligibility exemptions are very vast and they are always evolving, which is great, but we really, we wanted to find an easier way to identify those student exemptions that they were meeting. So if you do have a student that you're helping, which I know many of you are helping just students, you want to make sure to capture the way that you think that they're eligible for CalFresh. So this is sort of a built-in double check as well. It really can work as that, that final conversation reminder of being like, okay, yeah, so you have this job that you're working this many hours, or you're in this program. Just kind of helps as that double check for that pre-screening that you'll do with them before you get to this point. So we have kept it very general as per the state guidelines. I know that many of you that are working with campuses have programs that maybe are they're called something different. For example, under I think that 5th box, there's a program called Guardian Scholars. I know a lot of your campuses call it Renaissance Scholars. You can still check that box because it's still a similar program. We still want to capture those programs that sort of fall under those categories. And so again, check all the boxes that apply. Many students meet multiple exemptions, so we want to capture all of those. And then there at the bottom is just a comment section for anything extra that you might want to put in the notes of the application's information. So this could, this may be helpful when you're doing follow-ups. I know that in our own office, sometimes we put that, a student works days, so it's better to call them in the afternoon when we're doing our follow-ups. Or, just little bits that will help you assist them in their process can go in there, and they can then get plugged into that master log. So if you have any questions about this contact sheet, definitely feel free to put them in the chat box. But again, this will be something that we'll be training all of the new campuses on as you get your annual training with us. So you'll see this again for sure. But I know that some of you are already using this. So, okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the contact sheet information all gets entered into this master log. So really that contact sheet is your data source for everything that goes in here. Your master log is super important for your program reporting because this is how you're capturing all of the applications that you've been doing throughout the quarter. So again, that that contact sheet is just super important. We want you to be getting credit for all the applications that you're doing. So we just want to make sure that every contact sheet ends up in here. We can actually share the master log. I think I'm going to share my screen for a minute so we can actually look at the master log. So let's see. Okay, hopefully you all can see my screen. It should look like an Excel spreadsheet. Let's see. So this is our new and improved master log. Again, if you've been working with us for the last few years, we really tried to fine tune this so it's as user-friendly as possible. We really wanted to make it so that it really closely matched that contact sheet and it was easy to do the data entry part of it. Data entry can definitely be time consuming, so we want to be mindful to make it as easy as possible. So I do want to mention there is a section up here at the top that you'll see that says subcontractor. So we're actually going to send you all a locked version of this master log that has your specific subcontractor information already in there. So if you've started using the master log already, we can definitely help you convert your old master log into the new one if you would like help. And if not, you can just use the new master log and put the old information in there if you've already started using it. So if you would like help with that, we can absolutely help you convert it to this new one. But I think that you'll find that the changes that we've made to this new one are going to be really helpful. So under that, you're going to see information that very closely matches the contact sheet. So you have your data entry initials, your assist date. Then we get into some new questions. So we get into the type of assistance that you offered. So I know Lisa's going to talk about this in a little bit. She's going to talk about other types of tracking for verifications and things like that. But just so you all know, you can plug in not only your application type of assistance in here, but also your verification assistance. We'll go into that a little bit more in depth here in a little bit. But as you'll see, if you click on application, it'll gray out certain areas that do not need to be filled out. But if you're logging a verification in here, it'll gray out these other areas because for verifications, we don't need to track nearly as much information. So just for example, if you're tracking a verification, you'll go to this next box that says verifications and you'll just select what type of assistance it was. So this is really going to come into play for those of you that have scope of work items for your STAR 7s or for your recertifications, but it also will be helpful if you are seeing that you're helping a lot of applicants with sending in the verifications for their original application. So any of those are able to be selected there. But we're going to actually go back to application because that's really the main thing that we're focusing on today. So you'll see over here you can click on the method of assistance. So you have those same options that match the contact sheet. So it's just all has those drop downs, so it makes it a little bit easier. It also cuts out the space for error or for different types of ways of saying the same thing. So we found that that really helps to just have them options like that rather than the free type-in spaces, the cells. Going down the list, again, you'll see that this just very closely mirrors everything that is on that contact sheet. So as far as their name, birthday, county, all of that, that all pretty much matches the contact sheet that we just looked at. And this section right here is really nice too. Like if, for example, you're wanting to look for all the clients or the applicants that you've helped in a certain county, if you're helping applicants in multiple counties, you can do a filter or sort for those as well. So this is going to be really helpful for pulling not just your program data, but if you're really wanting to look at certain factors, this will allow you to do that as well. Address, phone number, email, those are all pretty self-explanatory. Online or paper, again, those are options over here in the drop down. Application number, like I said, we really want to Always capture those when we can. Displace the same thing. And then we get over to the state demographics and the student exemptions. So the easiest way that we were able to do this, and actually this bar needs to come down a little bit, was just to have them each be their own column, but to have you mark all that applied with the X. That was the easiest way to really sum everything, to tally everything. Let's see, sorry, I got distracted by a question. So there is a question, are we able to add a location drop down to the location column? Yes, you can absolutely do that if you would like. So you can do that on your own after you get your master log, if that makes sense, or we can help you add that too, if that's helpful. So yeah, that's definitely an option. Okay, so going back to the state demographics. So yeah, again, just mark everything that applies with the X, and then you can total, you can sum these different demographics. And we'll want to see this when you send in your master log for your program reporting as well. But so you'll do that. And then you'll do the same thing with those student exemptions. So again, everything that applies, you just want to put an X in there. So then you can, I mean, it's actually really cool to be able to say, okay, I want to sort by this, or I want to tally these, and it's really cool to see, oh, wow, we helped, 150 students that were on work study. It's really neat to pull those kinds of numbers and be able to pull them in an easy way. Okay, and then there's a section for those additional comments like I talked about. So again, anything that will help you with their case or with their application later on during that follow-up process, that's really what that section is for, to put that additional information. And then that marks the end of the contact sheet information that goes in here. But we do have another section built in here for the follow-up process. So this is where, if you're doing follow-ups with your applicants, and again, we're going to do a whole webinar on that, this is where you want to put all of that information. So you can see an example in here of a follow-up that we may have done. So we always like to put the date in there, the type of follow-up it was, and where they're at in the process, just so that if someone else were to come and do the follow-ups, they would know sort of what was going on. There's also additional fields in here where you can note if they have an ROI on file. So if you've had our training already, you'll remember that you do need that ROI, that release of information, to be able to contact the county on their behalf. We have recommended that you do not fill one out for everyone that applies, unless it makes sense to your specific site. But we have found that it's really important to just fill out the ROIs for the clients or the applicants that come back in and need that additional support with you helping them with that county contact. And then there's a spot also to mark if that follow-up was complete. Also, if they were approved for benefits, that's always my favorite one to mark, because it's just so satisfying to see the applicants be approved and get the benefits that they desperately need. And then you can also, not as fun of a box to mark is that denied for benefits. You can mark that as well. You can put any notes in there. And again, too, this is really a good place for you to identify sort of the trends that are going on. So if you're seeing that you're having a lot of denials, or you're seeing in your follow-up notes that a lot of your applicants, they're missing their interview, or they're having a hard time gathering certain verifications, it helps you really identify places that you can add more support. So definitely feel free to ask any questions just as we go along. That was the Q1 overview for the master log. The quarters 2 through 4 are the same. They're virtually the same. They're just for different quarters. And now we're going to look at the additional tabs that we have on here. So yes, you can ask questions at any time. Okay, so there is also an example sheet in here if you have any questions about what each field means or how you should fill it out. There's also examples in there of they're fake clients or fake applicants, but there's examples of, you know, what it may look like if you had that information in there. So definitely feel free to check that out. But if you have any questions about any of these fields or how to fill things out, you can always send them to us as well. That's totally fine too. Let's see, we do have an additional question I see. It's from Allison. DPSS outreach is coming to our campus to help with CalFresh application assistance before our training with you. How do we capture the student info? Should we have students fill out the contact sheet before they see a county rep? So the answer is yes, to absolutely have them fill out that contact sheet. Especially with LA County, we have the relationship with them where if they're helping with that actual application, you can still count those applications if you gather that contact sheet. So just make sure you're gathering that contact sheet from all of your applicants, and then they can move on with the process with that DPSS worker. But that contact sheet is going to be the most important piece for you to be able to then plug into your master log later. So yeah, good question. And if you would like to talk about that more, Allison, about that partnership, I'd be happy to schedule a call with you too. Okay. So that's the example sheet, pretty self-explanatory, just it's going over the same things that we just covered, but just with those examples. Okay, the next one that we have, the next tab is the tracking for our pre-screens and our partner tracking. So Elise is going to go over the logs that we've developed to track these items, but this is where you're actually going to total them up so that they get submitted to us when you're doing your quarterly reporting. So for pre-screens, as you have seen on that scope of work document in that chart, you will need to track the pre-screens that you're doing with all of the people that you're talking to. So these numbers are going to be higher than your application numbers because you're definitely going to pre-screen plenty of people that may not look to be eligible. So you want to capture not only the people that didn't apply, but you also want to capture the people that did apply because we're going to pre-screen everyone that applies. So what you'll do is you'll use the log that Elisa will go over here in a little bit, and you'll just plug those final numbers for this quarter in. And then it will be the same with the partnerships. So if you, in a few minutes, we're going to go over the partnership log as well. You're going to plug in the types of partnerships that you've had over the quarter, and they're really broken down into two things. So they're broken into two types of partnerships: trainings or collaborative meetings. So we'll go over that a little bit more in depth, but this is just the place that information will end up after you've done those calculations. And so just so you know, we're going to talk about this again in a little while, but for your program reporting, you're wanting to just send us the quarter that's due along with your pre-screen and partner tracking tabs. You do not have to send us any additional tabs. You can just, make a copy of your sheet and then send us those two tabs. But again, we'll go over everything that you need to send for your program reporting here in a little bit. And then I also just want to point out here at the end, there is a section for the definitions for the population designations that CDSS wants us to capture. So I think most of them are, again, pretty self-explanatory, but for college students, for example, they do consider a college student something different than what you might think. You may think that a college student is anyone attending any amount of classes at a college campus. That's actually not the case. They need to be attending at least half time and be between the ages of 18 and 49. So if you haven't had our training yet, we will go into this in depth for sure when we go over the pre-screening process. But I just wanted to point that one out because that one is a little bit different than what we may think. These other ones are, I think, all pretty self-explanatory, but if any of these apply, just make sure to make that note on that contact sheet so that it ends up then in your master log later on. Let's see, we have a couple questions I see. Let's see, Doris asks, can we make the contact sheet electronic through our base sync, and would that be accepted as an improved item with our counties? I believe, yes, you could potentially make your contact sheet electronic, but I have to tell you that I have tried to, we have tried to do that before and we ran into some bumps. So you can definitely turn this into an electronic form if it really closely matches that, the paper form. But really, as long as you have a way to capture all of that exact same information and get it into your master log, you can do it that way if it makes more sense for your campus. So we can definitely talk about that more too privately if you would like to. And then I see another question from Genevieve. Is there a pre-screen form of it now that's called the contact sheet? Okay, thank you, Kathleen, for answering that. Yeah, the pre-screen form and the contact sheet, they are two different forms. Again, that'll be gone over in depth at your training, but the pre-screen form is sort of the half sheet that we use that has all of the, potential eligibility information on it that helps guide our conversations with an applicant, with a potential applicant. But that contact sheet is for after you've done that pre-screening process. So yeah, we'll make sure to make that really clear at the training that we do at your campus. Okay. Continue to send your questions if you have any others, but I think we can go back to the slides if we could click back to those. So I'm going to stop my share. Okay, and just some best practices that we have learned from not only our own campus, but our subcontractors that we've been working with for the last few years. So like I've been mentioning, that master log definitely should mirror those contact sheets. I think I've definitely shown how closely they match, and so it should definitely be the same information from that contact sheet that goes into that master log. The portal screenshot numbers that you will send in along with your master log, which Elisa will talk about here in a few minutes, they should really mirror what's in the master log. The screenshot should mirror that, but there are exceptions. So for example, if you have on your online portal, say you're using your benefits now, and it says that you did 20 applications in the quarter. Your master log really should also show 20 applications unless something different happened, unless you maybe did paper applications for part of those. That might make it so that those numbers don't match. Also, if you did a partnership with the county where they came and helped with applications, your portal screenshot may not match that. But I mean, really, if you're doing just online applications and you're not doing a partnership like that, the master log really should match that screenshot as closely as possible. We have also seen that if you designate one person on your team to enter the data into the master log, it is a lot more consistent, and they sort of have that ownership over all of that data. So we have absolutely seen that the more people enter data, the more inconsistent it can get, but we typically see that if you designate, one, maybe two people to be that data entry lead, it's really helpful for just making sure that data is consistent. And then that master log data, as I mentioned, is used for our quarterly report that we then submit to CDSS. So we receive your master logs as part of that quarterly reporting. We roll it all up into a state report, which we then send to CDSS. So this information is really important so that you get credit for the work that you're absolutely doing. So yeah, it's just really important to capture everything just because you want to get credit for all the good work that you're doing. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Elisa, who's going to talk about some of those additional reporting requirements and those additional data collecting logs.
There we go. Can you go back? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me now? Okay, so I will be talking about additional data collecting logs, which include the pre-screening log, verification logs, and partnership logs. Next slide, please. So pre-screening, as Brandy mentioned earlier, we'll go more in depth about pre-screening when we do your campus training. It is a separate form from the contact sheet. And the pre-screening really is what happened after we engage the applicant and they are interested in applying for CalFresh. Prior to submitting an application, we like to pre-screen the applicant to make sure that they look to be eligible for CalFresh. The pre-screen is a conversation starter about the applicant's situation, and it really helps us gather the information that will go into the contact sheet. So pre-screening can actually be done in person, email, or by phone. So now we will pull up the pre-screening log. The Excel sheet. So this is our CalFresh Outreach pre-screening log, and you will begin by entering or writing in the date, and this form can be used electronically or paper. That's up to you. That's your choice. You will put the initials of the person who did the pre-screen, the location of where the pre-screening took place, so it can be outreach. There we go. Okay, so we apologize for those delays. So this is our CalFresh Outreach pre-screening log. So you will begin by entering the date, the initials of the person who did the pre-screen, so your staff, the location, and that can take place in your office, outreach, phone, email, how many people did you pre-screen, and out of those, how many people completed an application. So this is really a tally. And this is internal. You do not have to send this to us, but you will report quarterly the number in the master log that Brandy showed earlier. Next, and we can go back to the presentation. So now the verification log. The purpose of this log is to keep track of when we work with students to submit verifications for original application semi-annual report, which is STAR 7, or annual recertification, which we refer to as RE. So now we're going to switch and look at the log. So you will begin by entering or writing in the date, the initials of the person who assisted with verifications, the applicant's name, the applicant's birthday. And the reason that we ask for birthdays is that some applicants may have common names, and if they don't have a case number, then the caseworkers may have a hard time identifying which case do the verifications belong to. So the birthday just makes it easier on the county side. We also like to write the county, and then you will check the box that applies, whether it's a verification for original application, a verification for a STAR 7, or a verification for an RE. And if you're working on this electronically, you can actually click on it and it'll have a check mark. And the last log is our partnership log. So partnerships are collaborations beyond expected CFO activities. It is broken into 2 categories. This includes meetings, trainings, and workshops provided to other agency programs or departments serving targeted populations. Participation in collaborative meetings to provide information or education on CalFresh. So it could either be a meeting or a participation in a collaborative meeting, a training or that. So now we'll look at the partnership log. The CalFresh Outreach Partnership log is very similar to the other 2 logs. So you'll write the date, the name of the partner, name or description of meeting, training, or workshop, and you'll check if it's a training or collaborative meeting, how many participated. And again, this is an internal log, so you will just quarterly report the number. But it's important to keep this active and to keep this as much information as you can, because you will provide some of this information for your mid-year narrative and your annual narrative. And again, as mentioned, you can use this electronically or paper, whatever best serves your campus, and then just add that number to the master log. Now we're going to transition to quarterly program reporting. We will send you calendar reminders, so you'll get one in December for the January due date. Prior to reporting date, we will also send you a link where you will upload your reporting items. So these are the quarterly reporting due dates. This is just a quick snapshot, and we will send you calendar invites and plenty of reminders. So what needs to be submitted? So you will submit your entire master log, your entire workbook, and you have to make sure that the quarter tab that is due is completed, as well as the pre-screen and partnership tab for that quarter. What else needs to be submitted? An online portal screenshot for your CBO reports showing the number of applications submitted, approved, or denied. And you can see the example here of your benefits now, where you can see pending applications, approved applications, or denied. Or if you're using CalFresh, in the dashboard, in the main dashboard towards the top, there is it says you can download as a Excel sheet, and you can download that and submit that as well. We will use that as your portal screenshot. So now we submit reports quarterly, but at the end of quarter 2 and at the end of quarter 4, we also submit semi-annual and annual narratives. So additionally, additionally, for the mid-year and annual report, there will be a narrative form due. It's a template that's already done, so we will provide those templates to you guys. And typical questions or topics include challenges and resolutions, success, county relationships and examples, and promising practices to share. So we'd really like for you guys to emphasize what's working on your campus, what's not, how is that county relationship, are there issues, are there anything that we can help with, and what is working for your campus that could potentially work on other campus or even our campus here. You will also include your partnerships in this annual narrative, in your mid-year and annual narrative, and anything that you would like to share with us. We roll this up into the state as well. And this is for both campus and Far North partners, so you will all submit narratives. So we've shared with you guys plenty of information today. So what is next? So we want you to get familiar with the master log and contact sheet. Like we mentioned, we will send each of your campus a master log, and then we will also follow up with this email with a contact sheet. Check out additional data logs and implement. See what works for your campus. If paper works on your campus, if electronically works for your campus, these are internal logs for you. The master log will be shared with us, but the rest are internal logs for you to work with and for you to enter with to the master log. Identify who your data entry person and people may be. It's really important to have a designated person or people to do it. That way it doesn't get confusing, or you're not having to do this all at once when reportings are due. So we do our data entry in our campus probably once a week. And then again, watch for reporting calendar invites in December. So we will send you that as well with instructions, and feel free to ask us any questions at that point. The due date for the first report is due January 15th, and we will give you plenty of notice about that as well. And again, reach out with questions. We know that this might not make sense now because maybe we haven't trained your campus, but it will make sense later. So please watch this video again or ask us questions. And you can always reach us at the CHC CalFresh Outreach at csuchico.edu email, or you can call us at 530-898-5442. And this is also a good time for you to ask questions if you have any questions right now.
I do also just want to mention that some campuses have not been trained yet. So if say for example that you're not having your training until January, it's totally understandable if you do not have application numbers to report for quarter 1. So if that's the case, that is totally okay. Don't be worried about that. We definitely know that if you're new to this contract, it takes some time to get up and running. So even if you have nothing to report in quarter 1, that's okay. Don't worry about that.
Hi, everybody. It's Kathleen here. It looks like we finished up a few minutes early, so we're going to hang tight for a little while and answer any questions. We'll have the chat box up, but if you want to ask your questions over the phone, we can definitely unmute you. So just let us know. We'll be hanging around. Oh, it looks like we have a question from Genevieve. Any updates on the master agreement? So I know everybody's been hearing this, but any day now, we have been in close communication with CDSS. We've been pretty much having constant contact with them. We have heard from their contracts department. It is moving along, and we should receive it. They are sending it electronically, so we don't have to wait for it to come in the mail. That's great. So we're hoping to have an update for everybody soon on that. The minute we know, you guys will know for sure. So, but again, we do have that promising language from CDSS that we will be able to backdate expenses back to 10/1/2018. So if you feel comfortable with that language that we've received from CDSS, you can start your activities. If not, you can hold off until we have the signed agreement. That is up to your campus.
Genevieve, I see you have a question. Can you tell us more about the CBO report and what portal we will be taking screenshots from? So it really depends your county. And there are 3 portals in California. There is My Benefits CalWin, See for Yourself, and Your Benefits Now, which is LA County. And there is an additional portal that we use that's mobile friendly, which is Get CalFresh. So we will, when we do your campus training, we will tell you which portals your county is using and which screenshot you will be sending us.
These are great questions. Please, if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. Okay, well, it looks like everybody's thinking really intently about their questions. So we're going to go ahead and mute us, but we're going to leave the chat box open and the presentation up for a few more minutes, just in case there's any lingering questions.
And if not, if you don't have any questions, thank you so much for joining us today. You can go ahead and sign off, but we will be sending a follow-up email that has not only these slides and the recording, but also some of these additional documents that we talked about today. So watch for that in the next few days. We'll send that follow-up here soon.